"You will never be my wife," said the Millionaire CEO. But 2 years later, he saw her with the girls, and what he did next will surprise you. A very, very beautiful story for my beautiful family. Don't miss the ending. I promise you'll enjoy it. Let's start the story together. Wade Bemmels had learned to measure his worth in zeros, the kind that followed numbers, not the kind that described what lived inside his chest. The penthouse sat like a monument to everything he'd conquered. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city below, thousands of lights twinkling like distant stars he'd never bothered to wish upon. The furniture was Italian, the art was original, the silence was absolute. Wade stood at those windows most nights, whiskey in hand, watching people move through their small lives far below, and felt nothing. Nothing was safe. Nothing was predictable. Nothing could hurt you. He'd built his empire the way other men built sandcastles, except his wouldn't wash away with the tide. Every acquisition, every merger, every calculated risk had been another brick in the wall between who he used to be and who he'd forced himself to become. The foster kid, who'd slept in 7 different beds before he turned 10, didn't exist anymore. That boy had starved to death somewhere along the way, and Wade had stepped over his corpse without looking back. "Mr. Bemmels, your morning briefing is ready." His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, pulling him from thoughts he didn't want to examine. Wade turned from the window, drained the whiskey, and straightened his tie. Another day. Another series of moves on a board where he always played to win. The boardroom was exactly what people expected. Long table, leather chairs, expensive views. His executive team sat waiting, folders open, faces arranged in practiced neutrality. Wade had hired them because they were brilliant and because they understood that feelings were liabilities in this world. "The community initiative proposals are ready for review," Kelton Reeves said, sliding a file across the table. Kelton had been there from the beginning, back when the company was 3 people in a rented office. If Wade trusted anyone, it was him. "We've narrowed it down to 5 consulting firms." Wade barely glanced at the files. Community initiatives, public image, all the things rich people did to convince themselves their money meant something beyond the numbers. "Who's recommending which?" "I'd suggest the Barrett Group. Clean, efficient, minimal oversight needed. Set up the meetings. I'll sit in on the presentations." He shouldn't have. Looking back later, in the wreckage of everything that came after, Wade would remember that moment. The casual decision to attend meetings he could have delegated. The choice that put him in that room when she walked in. Donna Queen entered the conference room like weather, not announced, just suddenly present and impossible to ignore. She wore a simple dress, her hair natural and untamed, her face bare of the makeup most women used as armor in spaces like this. She carried a leather portfolio that had seen better days and walked with the kind of confidence that didn't need designer heels to make a point. Wade felt something shift in his chest, something he didn't have a name for. "Good afternoon." Her voice was warm molasses and Sunday mornings. "I'm Donna Queen, here representing the Foundations Collective. Thank you for the opportunity to present." The other firms had brought slideshow presentations filled with statistics and projections. Donna Queen opened her portfolio, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it across the table to Wade. "That's a child's drawing," she said simply. "Her name is Imani. When I asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up, she said, alive, not a doctor, not an astronaut, just alive. Because where she lives, that's not guaranteed." Wade stared at the crayon drawing, a little girl holding hands with what might have been her mother, a house, a son, childish and heartbreaking in its simplicity. "Your current proposal," Donna continued, looking directly at him in a way that made his expensive suit feel like costume, "is charity theater. You want to write checks and cut ribbons and feel good about yourselves. But you don't actually want to change anything because change is uncomfortable. Change requires you to look at the Imanis of the world and admit that your success and her suffering are part of the same broken system." The room went silent. Kelton's eyes widened. The other executives shifted uncomfortably. Wade should have ended the meeting right there. Should have had security escort her out for insulting him in his own building. Instead, he leaned forward, fingers steepled, and asked, "What would you do differently?" Donna Queen smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was challenging. "I'd stop treating poverty like a PR problem and start treating it like what it is, a failure of imagination and will. Your money matters less than your time, your attention, your willingness to actually see the people you claim you want to help. That's not a business model." "No," she agreed. "It's just human decency. I understand if that's not what you're looking for." She gathered her portfolio, stood, and headed for the door. Wade watched her go, that strange feeling in his chest spreading like warmth through frozen ground. "Miss Queen," she stopped, turned. "Leave your proposal. I'll review it personally." Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. "Why?" "Because you're the first person in this building who's told me the truth in a very long time." She studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "The truth is all I've got, Mr. Bemmels. I can't afford anything else." After she left, Kelton leaned over. "You're not seriously considering her proposal." "Why not?" "Because she just called us all complicit in systemic poverty." "She did," Wade agreed, still staring at the drawing of little Imani, and she wasn't wrong. The next meeting, Wade scheduled himself. Just the two of them, his office, late afternoon when the building had emptied and the city lights were just beginning to glow. Donna arrived exactly on time. Professional, but guarded. She sat across from his desk like she was ready for a fight. "I read your proposal," Wade began. "It's aggressive, expensive, and it'll take far more involvement from my company than the others suggested." "Is that a problem?" "No," he paused. "It's refreshing." She blinked, clearly not expecting that. "So you want to move forward?" "I want to understand what you're really after." "Money's easy. Every consultant wants money. But you're asking for something else. Time, access, commitment. Why?" Donna set her portfolio down and met his eyes straight on. "Because I've watched rich people throw money at problems my whole life, Mr. Bemmels. They fund programs they never visit, schools they never set foot in, communities they drive past with their windows up. And when nothing changes, they shrug and say, 'Well, we tried,' like that means something. I'm not interested in making you feel better about inequality. I'm interested in actual change, and that requires more than your checkbook. You don't think much of people like me." "I don't know people like you," she corrected. "I know the version you show the world, the suits and the titles and the press releases. But I don't know who you actually are underneath all that. Maybe nobody does. Maybe not even you." The words should have felt like an attack. Instead, they felt like an excavation, like she was digging towards something he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed. "What if I told you I came from nothing?" Wade heard himself say. "That I grew up in foster care, that I wore second-hand clothes and ate government cheese and got beat up for being the poor kid? I'd say that makes it worse." He flinched. "Excuse me? You know what it's like to be powerless, to be invisible, to be written off. And you still built an empire that does the same thing to other people. That's not triumph, Mr. Bemmels. That's tragedy." The silence that followed was crushing. Wade felt something cracking inside him, some wall he'd spent decades fortifying. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly. Donna Queen stood, gathered her things, and walked to the door. Then she paused, looked back. "I want you to remember what it felt like to be that kid. And I want you to decide if the man you've become would have helped him or walked right past." The door closed behind her with a soft click. Wade sat alone in his office as the city lights blazed brighter and the darkness pressed against the glass. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something besides nothing, and it terrified him. He hired her the next morning, told himself it was because her proposal made sense, because the board would appreciate the optics, because it was a smart decision. But when Donna Queen walked back into his office to sign the contract, and she smiled, really smiled, like maybe she saw something in him worth believing in, Wade Bemmels realized he'd just made the most dangerous decision of his life, not because of the money or the program or the risk to his company, but because for the first time since he'd learned to measure his worth in zeros, someone was asking him to measure it in something else entirely, something real, something human, something that might actually matter when the lights went out, and the silence closed in, and all his empire couldn't buy him one goddamn reason to feel alive. "Welcome aboard," he said, extending his hand. She took it, her grip firm and warm and absolutely nothing, like the calculated handshakes he'd exchanged 10,000 times before. "Don't make me regret this," she said. And standing there, her hand in his, Wade Bemmels understood with perfect clarity that it was already too late for both of them. Chapter 2. The Fall. Donna Queen had never been a woman who fell easily, but Wade Bemmels didn't seduce her with wealth. He seduced her with the truth he was terrified to show anyone else. The work started professionally enough. Meetings about budget allocations, site visits to community centers, endless discussions about measurable impact. Donna was brilliant at her job, relentless in her standards, unwilling to compromise on what mattered. Wade found himself looking forward to their sessions in ways that had nothing to do with quarterly projections. He'd catch himself watching her during meetings, the way she'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about the kids they were helping. She had this habit of standing near windows when she was thinking, letting the light fall across her face, completely unaware of how beautiful she was in those unguarded moments. "This building is dying," Donna said one afternoon, standing in what used to be a youth center on the south side. The windows were boarded up, the walls tagged with graffiti, the basketball court cracked and overgrown with weeds. But it could live again, if someone cared enough to see what it used to be. Wade looked around at the decay. "Big cease, at justice and size, it would cost a fortune to renovate." "Everything worth doing costs something," she replied, running her hand along the wall like she was comforting an old friend. "My grandmother Dulcie used to bring me here when I was little. There was a woman named Miss Temperance who ran programs for kids who had nowhere else to go. She taught me to read in that corner right there, taught me that I mattered, even when the world said I didn't." "Where is she now?" "Still around, still fighting for kids who need her. She's retired from running this place, but she mentors people like me who are trying to carry on her work." Donna's voice was warm with affection. "She's the one who taught me that real change requires showing up, not just signing checks. Used to say, money's easy, but presence is expensive. I didn't understand what she meant until I got older." Wade watched her speak about this woman with such reverence, watched the way memories softened her edges. He wanted to fix the building, to throw money at the problem until it disappeared, but he was learning that wasn't what she needed. "Tell me about her," he said instead. "About all of them. The people who made you who you are." So Donna did. They sat on the broken steps of that dying building as the afternoon light faded, and she told him stories about Miss Temperance, about her grandmother Dulcie, who raised her and her brother Emmett when their mother couldn't, about growing up in a neighborhood where love was abundant and hope was rationed. She told him about the neighbor who taught her to braid hair, about the librarian who let her check out more books than allowed, about the coach who saw potential in a skinny girl nobody else noticed. "What about your mother?" Wade asked quietly. Donna's expression shifted, something painful crossing her face. "My mother loved her addictions more than she loved her children. That's not judgment, it's just fact. Dulcie tried to help her, tried everything, but you can't save someone who doesn't want saving. Last I heard, she was somewhere in Florida. I stopped trying to find her when I realized she didn't want to be found. I'm sorry. Don't be. I had Dulcie. I had Emmett. I had Miss Temperance and this place and 100 other people who showed me what real family looks like. Not blood, choice. That's what family is. People who choose you every single day." She looked at him. "What about you? You said foster care, but you never talk about it." Wade stared at the cracked basketball court, the weeds pushing through concrete like stubborn hope. There's not much to say. My mother worked herself to death trying to keep us fed. 3 jobs. I remember her hands, always cracked, always tired. She'd come home and make me dinner even when she was so exhausted she could barely stand. Then one day she just didn't wake up. Her heart gave out. She was 38. Wade. I was in the system before I even understood what that meant. 7 homes. Some were fine, some weren't. I learned to keep my head down, work hard, trust nobody. Learned that vulnerability was weakness, and weakness got you hurt. That's a lonely way to live. It's a safe way to live. Safe and lonely are the same thing. Wade! He looked at her then, really looked at her, and felt something shift in his chest. She was watching him with those eyes that saw through every wall he'd built, and instead of feeling exposed, he felt seen. Actually seen. For the first time since his mother died. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Do what? Be real, be open. I've spent so long being the person everyone expects that I don't remember who I actually am underneath. Donna reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were warm, strong, certain. Then maybe it's time to find out. They started spending time together outside of work. Wade told himself it was still professional, that they were building rapport, that understanding each other made the partnership stronger. But when Donna invited him to Sunday dinner at her grandmother's house, he knew he was lying to himself. He bought flowers, stood outside the car for 5 minutes, nervous in a way he hadn't been since he was a teenager. This mattered. She mattered. And walking through that door meant admitting he wanted more than professional respect from her. Dulcie's home was everything Wade's penthouse wasn't. Small, crowded, alive. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable. The walls covered in family photos, spanning generations. The air thick with the smell of cooking and the sound of laughter. Donna's brother Emmett opened the door, looked Wade up and down with exaggerated suspicion, and grinned. So you're the rich man my sister's been complaining about, Emmett. Be nice, Donna warned, appearing behind him with an apron on and flower in her hair. I am being nice. I said rich man instead of what I was thinking. Wade found himself laughing, actually laughing, for the first time in longer than he could remember. He handed Emmett the flowers. For your grandmother. Smart man, Emmett said, approval creeping into his voice. Come on in before Dulcie starts asking if we're air conditioning the whole neighborhood. Dulcie emerged from the kitchen, a small woman with steel in her spine and gentleness in her eyes. She studied Wade for a long moment, not his suit or his shoes, or the expensive watch he suddenly wished he'd left at home, but his face, like she was reading his soul. Then she nodded. You hungry, baby? Oh, yes, ma'am. Good, I don't trust people who don't eat. Sit yourself down. Donna, get this man some sweet tea before he dies of thirst. Dinner was chaos and perfection. The table was crowded with food. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, macaroni and cheese that made Wade want to weep. Emmett told stories that made Donna groan and laugh in equal measure. Dulcie asked Wade questions that seemed innocent, but cut straight to the truth, not about his money or his company, but about his character. What made him angry? What made him laugh? What he did when nobody was watching. Wade found himself answering honestly. Talking about the foster homes, about his mother's hands, about the loneliness that had driven him to build walls so high even he couldn't see over them anymore. That's real sad, baby, Dulcie said when he finished. But it's not an excuse. Everybody's got pain. Question is what you do with it. Build bridges or build walls? I'm trying to learn the difference, Wade said. Good. My granddaughter doesn't have patience for people who choose walls. After dinner, Wade helped clear the table despite protests, washed dishes alongside Emmett, while Donna and Dulcie packed up leftovers. The brothers, because that's what it felt like, standing in that kitchen doing ordinary things, talked about basketball and music, and nothing that mattered except the fact that they were talking at all. She likes you, Emmett said quietly, handing Wade a plate to dry. Really likes you. Don't make me regret not threatening you. I won't. See that you don't, because Donna's had enough people disappoint her. She deserves someone who shows up. This is my family, Donna said later, walking Wade to his car under a sky full of stars. Not perfect, but real. And if you're going to be in my life, you need to understand what that means. What does it mean? It means we show up. We tell the truth. We don't run when things get hard. Can you do that? Wade looked back at the little house with its warm lights and loud laughter, then at Donna standing in front of him, with hope and fear warring in her eyes. He thought about his penthouse, cold and pristine and utterly empty. Thought about the life he'd built that looked successful from the outside and felt hollow on the inside. "I want to try," he said. She kissed him then, soft and sudden and absolutely right. When they pulled apart, she was smiling, then try. The trying was terrifying and beautiful. Wade started letting his walls down, piece by piece. He told Donna about the foster father who'd locked him in closets, about the caseworker who'd forgotten his birthday, about lying awake at night wondering if anyone would notice if he disappeared. She listened without pity, holding his hand while he excavated the pain he'd buried. In return, she showed him her scars, the mother who'd chosen drugs over her daughter's birthday, the kids at school who'd mocked her second-hand clothes, the man who'd promised to love her and left when she wouldn't compromise her integrity for his convenience. They fell into patterns. Wednesday dinners at Dulce's, weekend mornings at the farmer's market, late nights on Wade's balcony, talking until the sun came up, discovering each other in the small moments that mattered more than grand gestures. Wade learned that Donna sang in the shower, but only when she thought nobody could hear. That she cried at commercials but stayed stoic through horror movies. That she kept a journal she'd been writing in since she was 10, filling pages with dreams and fears she'd never spoken aloud. Donna learned that Wade was afraid of the dark, but would never admit it. That he'd memorized poetry in foster care because words were the only things nobody could take from him. That he wanted children desperately, but was terrified he'd fail them the way he'd been failed. "I don't fall easily," she told him one night, lying in his arms in that cold penthouse that felt warmer when she was there. The city lights glittered below them like fallen stars. "But I fall completely. If you're not sure about this, about us, tell me now. Because once I give you my heart, Wade, I won't know how to take it back." He kissed her forehead, her cheek, her lips. "I'm sure, more sure than I've been about anything in my entire life. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if you ever stop being sure, you'll tell me. Don't let me believe in something that isn't real. I've had enough of that in my life." "I promise," he said, meaning it with everything he had. "I will never lie to you, Donna. Not about this. Not about us. Not about anything that matters." Months passed like a dream. They worked together, building programs that actually helped instead of just looking good on paper. They laughed together, watching terrible movies and arguing about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. They grew together, becoming people they'd both forgotten they could be. Wade started keeping a plant alive, started remembering to call Dulce on Sundays, started understanding that love wasn't a weakness to be managed, but a strength to be cultivated. Donna started trusting again, started believing that maybe not everyone would leave when things got difficult. Started imagining a future that included more than just her work and her family. And then, one evening in Dulce's kitchen after another family dinner, Wade got down on one knee. "I know I'm not good at this," he said, voice shaking, a ring box trembling in his hand. Emmett was watching from the doorway, Dulce from the stove, both of them silent for once. "I know I'm still learning how to be real, how to be vulnerable, how to be someone worthy of you. But you make me want to try. Every single day you make me want to be better, not for success or money or any of the things I used to think mattered. Just better, more human, more real. Marry me, Donna, build a life with me. Teach me what love actually means." Donna was crying, laughing, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, God, yes. Yes, yes, yes." Dulce blessed them with tears in her eyes. Emmett threatened Wade with bodily harm if he ever hurt his sister, but pulled him into a hug that said welcome to the family. And Wade Bemmels, The man who'd spent his whole life measuring worth in zeros understood for the first time what it meant to be rich. They married quickly, quietly, in Dulcie's backyard, on a warm evening with fireflies dancing and every person who actually mattered bearing witness. Donna wore a simple dress that made her look like something out of a dream. Wade couldn't stop crying during his vows, couldn't stop smiling, couldn't stop feeling like he'd finally found home. No media circus, no society pages, just love and truth and the promise of building something real together. "I choose you," Donna said during her vows, her hands in his. "Every single day for the rest of our days, I choose you. Your scars and your fears and your terrible singing voice. All of it, always. I choose you," Wade echoed. "And I promise to keep choosing you, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Miss Temperance gave the blessing, her old voice steady and strong. "Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone real and choosing them anyway. These two beautiful souls have found that. May they cherish it. May they fight for it. May they never take it for granted." Wade moved Donna into the penthouse, though she immediately started making it feel like a home. Plants appeared on the windowsills. Photos covered the sterile walls. Their wedding, Dulcie's Sunday dinners, candid moments of joy. Laughter filled the spaces that used to echo with silence. The cold monument to his success became warm with her presence. "I love you," he told her on their wedding night, and meant it more than he'd ever meant anything. "I love you too," she replied. "Don't forget that, even when things get hard, especially when things get hard." "I won't," Wade promised, but promises made in joy are easy. It's the promises tested by fear that reveal who we really are. And Wade Bemmels, for all his growth and change and desperate trying, was still the scared foster kid underneath, still measuring love as a liability, still waiting for the moment it would all be taken away. He just didn't know that moment was coming, or that when it did, he'd be the one doing the taking. Chapter 3, The Silence That Screamed Donna. Queen didn't cry when Wade Bemmels destroyed her. She simply looked at him with an expression that said, "I knew you'd break," when walked out of his life like smoke through fingers. The leak hit the financial news before Wade even got to his office. Confidential merger documents, strategic acquisitions, proprietary market analysis, all of it splashed across headlines with the kind of detail that could only come from inside access. The board called an emergency meeting. Investors were panicking. Millions were evaporating by the hour. Wade stood in the war room, watching his empire bleed, and felt the old instincts rising. Trust nobody. Protect yourself. Find the threat and cut it out before it kills you. Kelton entered with a tablet, his face grim. "We traced the access logs. The files were opened from a credentialed account during non-business hours. Someone with high-level clearance." "Who?" Kelton hesitated, and in that hesitation, Wade felt the ground start to crack beneath his feet. "The access codes trace back to Donna's login credentials." The room tilted. "That's impossible. I know you don't want to believe it, but look at the timestamps. Late nights. The files accessed had nothing to do with her projects. She had no reason to be in these systems." Wade stared at the data. The timestamps, the access logs, the damning digital trail that pointed directly to his wife. "There has to be an explanation." "I hope there is," Kelton said quietly. "But right now, the board wants answers, and they want whoever did this gone." The other executives filed in, their faces ranging from angry to sympathetic. The CFO spoke first. "We need to act decisively. If this was an employee breach, we terminate immediately and prosecute. We can't afford to look weak." "She's my wife," Wade said, but his voice sounded hollow. "Which makes it worse," someone else said. "The optics alone could destroy us. You need to distance yourself from this situation immediately." The meeting dragged on, each minute pulling Wade deeper into a pit he didn't know how to climb out of. The evidence was circumstantial but damning. The pressure was immense. And the voice in his head, the one that had kept him alive through foster care and poverty and every betrayal life had thrown at him, was screaming that he should have known better. than to trust anyone, especially someone who'd gotten so close. What if she'd played him from the beginning? "Bring her in," Wade heard himself say. "I need to hear it from her." Donna arrived within the hour, concern written across her face. She'd been at a school site when his assistant called, asking her to come immediately. She walked into his office, their office where they'd celebrated victories and planned their future, and Wade couldn't meet her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Your assistant wouldn't tell me anything." Wade stood behind his desk, the physical barrier suddenly necessary. "There's been a security breach. Confidential files leaked to the press. The access traces back to your credentials." He watched her face change. Confusion, then understanding, then something that looked like heartbreak. "You think I did this?" "I don't know what to think. The evidence is wrong," she said firmly. "Wade, I've never accessed anything outside my project files. I wouldn't even know where to find the kind of documents you're talking about. Then how did someone use your credentials?" I don't know. Maybe someone stole them. Maybe the system was hacked. Maybe—" She stopped, studying his face. "You've already decided, haven't you?" "I haven't decided anything. You called me to your office." "Not our home. Your office. You're standing behind your desk like I'm a threat. You can't even look at me." Her voice was steady, but he could hear the pain underneath. "I'm your wife, Wade, your wife, and you're looking at me like I'm the enemy. This isn't about us. This is about my company. Everything is about us," she said, and now there was fire in her voice. "We made vows. We promised to trust each other, to believe in each other, to be partners. And the first time something tests that, you default back to the person you were before. The person who trusts nobody." Wade's hands gripped the edge of his desk. "You have access. The timeline fits. The board wants answers." "And what do you want, Wade?" Donna stepped closer, and he instinctively stepped back. She noticed. He saw her notice. "Do you want the truth, or do you want an excuse to run before this gets any more real? Before our life together becomes something you can't control?" "That's not fair. None of this is fair." Her voice cracked. "I gave you everything. I married you. I trusted you with my whole heart. And the first time something tests that trust, you hide behind your desk and look at me like I'm the enemy. The evidence. Damn the evidence. I'm standing right here, looking you in the eye, telling you I didn't do this. Your wife is telling you the truth. Does that matter? Do I matter? Or is your empire more important than our marriage?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Wade wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. But the data was there, the pressure was mounting, and that voice in his head kept asking, what if she's lying? What if you're the fool? What if you're about to lose everything because you were stupid enough to fall in love? In Donna's purse, her phone vibrated. A reminder notification. The doctor's appointment she'd scheduled for later that week. The appointment where she was going to tell him about the baby. But Wade would never know about that appointment. Would never know what she'd been planning to share. Would never know that in her purse, tucked in a small envelope, was an ultrasound picture she'd been carrying for days, waiting for the perfect moment. "I need you to leave," he said quietly. Donna went very still. "What?" "Pending the investigation, you need to surrender your access credentials and—" "You're firing me. I'm protecting my company. You're destroying our marriage." She wasn't crying. He almost wished she was. Tears he could handle. But this quiet devastation, this look of absolute recognition in her eyes, like she'd known all along he'd do exactly this. It was unbearable. "I knew you'd break, I knew it. But I married you anyway, and that's on me." Donna and Wade, in his fear and his paranoia and his desperate need to protect himself from the vulnerability of love, said the cruelest thing he could find. "This marriage is over. I want a divorce. My lawyers will contact you." Something died in Donna's eyes. Not love. That would have been kinder. Hope. The hope that he'd become someone different, someone capable of choosing love over fear. She didn't scream, didn't beg, just stood there for a long moment, her hand unconsciously moving to her stomach, a protective gesture Wade was too blind to notice. then turned and walked toward the door. "Donna, wait!" She stopped, looked back, and the expression on her face was something he'd carry for the rest of his life. Not anger, not hatred, resignation, like she'd hoped for better but expected exactly this. "Goodbye, Wade. I hope your empire keeps you warm at night." The door closed behind her with a soft click. Wade stood alone in his office, surrounded by everything he'd built, everything he'd protected, everything that suddenly felt like absolutely nothing at all. The silence that followed was the loudest sound he'd ever heard. Donna made it to her car before the shaking started. She sat in the parking garage, hands gripping the steering wheel, the ultrasound picture burning a hole in her purse. She'd been carrying his children, their children, had been planning to tell him that weekend, had imagined his face when he found out, had dreamed of building a family with the man she'd married, and he'd looked at her like she was a stranger, like their vows meant nothing, like love was just another liability to be cut when things got complicated. Her phone buzzed. Emmett calling. She couldn't answer, couldn't form words yet. Another buzz, Dulcie, then a text from Temperance, everyone who loved her, reaching out, sensing something wrong. But Donna couldn't talk to any of them. Couldn't explain that her husband had just destroyed their marriage because he was too damaged to believe in her. Couldn't admit that she'd been naive enough to think love could fix someone that broken. Her hand moved to her stomach again. Protective. Fierce. She wouldn't tell Wade about the babies. Wouldn't give him the chance to doubt them too. Wouldn't let his fear poison the only pure thing left from their marriage. These children would be hers, only hers, raised in truth and love, and the certainty that they mattered, not because of their father's money or their mother's pain, but because they existed. She would protect them from him, from his walls and his fear and his terrible, destructive need to push away anything that made him vulnerable. Donna started the car, her decision made. She would leave, disappear, build a life where Wade's betrayal couldn't touch her daughters, and he would never know what he'd lost, never know he'd destroyed his family while his wife was carrying his children, never know that the worst thing he'd ever done wasn't just betraying her trust. It was orphaning his daughters before they were even born. Chapter 4. The Search. Wade Bemmels had once bought a failing company just to prove he could save it, but he couldn't find one. Woman who didn't want to be found. The truth came out within days. Kelton Reeve, his childhood friend, his trusted CFO, the man who'd been there from the beginning, arrested for embezzlement, for corporate espionage, for selling Wade's secrets to a competitor. The leaked documents were just the final piece, the desperate move of a man who knew the walls were closing in. He'd used Donna's credentials, planted evidence, whispered suspicions, fed Wade's paranoia like gasoline on a fire, and Wade had believed him, had chosen his empire over his wife, had destroyed his marriage because he was too damaged to recognize salvation when it was standing right in front of him. The investigators laid it out in excruciating detail. The timestamps didn't match Donna's actual locations. The access patterns were wrong. A forensic audit showed Kelton had been stealing for months, covering his tracks by pointing fingers elsewhere. The evidence that had seemed so damning fell apart under scrutiny. Wade stood in the same office where he'd accused her, staring at the reports, and felt his soul crack open. He'd done this. Not Kelton, him. He'd looked into his wife's eyes and chosen to believe the worst because believing the best required a courage he didn't have. He'd told her their marriage was over. He'd demanded a divorce over a lie. He called her number. Disconnected. He went to the penthouse they'd shared. Empty, her things gone like she'd never been there. He contacted her family. No response. Dulcie's house sat quiet. Emmett wouldn't return his calls. Even Temperance Oakes, the elderly woman Donna spoke of with such reverence, wouldn't take his calls when he tracked down her number. Donna Queen had erased herself from his world completely, efficiently, like she'd never existed at all. Panic set in. The kind of panic money couldn't fix. Wade hired investigators. Not corporate security, private investigators who specialized in finding people who disappeared. They came back empty-handed. Donna had closed her social media accounts, terminated her email, ended her contracts. She'd left the city entirely, and nobody would say where she'd gone. He tried legal channels. Divorce lawyers said she had every right to space and separation, especially given his accusations. He couldn't force her to communicate, couldn't force her to forgive. Weeks turned into months. Wade threw resources at the problem that would have solved any other crisis in his life. But Donna was gone like morning fog, leaving nothing behind but the ghost of what they'd had. He visited the community center where they'd sat on broken steps and shared their scars. It was boarded up now, scheduled for demolition. The basketball court was more weeds than concrete. He stood there remembering her voice saying, "This building is dying, but it could live again if someone cared enough." Can I help you?" Wade turned to find an elderly woman watching him from the sidewalk, small, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen too much and forgiven too little. Temperance Oaks. "Please," he said, and his voice broke. "Please tell me where she is. I need to apologize. I need her to know I was wrong." Temperance's expression was hard. "She came by here one last time, before she left. Said she needed to heal somewhere you'd never think to look. Somewhere she could rebuild herself without ghosts." "Whoa, did she say where?" "No, and I wouldn't tell you if she had." Temperance stepped closer. "What did you do to that girl, Mr. Bemmels?" "I didn't believe her when she needed me to. I chose my fear over our marriage. I said things that can't be unsaid. Then maybe you shouldn't be looking for her," Temperance said, her voice gentle but firm. "Maybe the kindest thing you can do is let her heal in peace. She gave you her whole heart, and you crushed it. She doesn't owe you forgiveness." "I know," Wade whispered, "but I love her." "Then prove it by letting her go, by becoming someone worthy of the love she gave you, even if she never sees it. Do the work, Mr. Bemmels, not to win her back, but because it's right." Temperance walked away, leaving Wade alone, in front of a dying building that had once meant hope. The divorce papers arrived 3 months later, filed from a lawyer in a city he'd never been to, on behalf of a woman who wouldn't include a return address. Clean, final, asking for nothing except her freedom. Wade signed them with shaking hands. This was what he deserved. This was the consequence of his fear. He tried one more time to find her, hired better investigators, offered money for information, chased every lead that went nowhere. One investigator came back with a single piece of information. She left the state, changed her phone number, requested that anyone who knew her location keep it confidential. "She doesn't want to be found, Mr. Bemmels, especially not by you." "Did you find out anything else?" The investigator hesitated. "No, sir. Just that she's rebuilding her life somewhere else. And from what I could gather, she's doing well." Wade wanted to know more, wanted to know if she was happy, if she'd found peace, if she'd forgiven him, even if she couldn't tell him. But he'd lost the right to know those things the moment he'd chosen his empire over his wife. 2 years passed, 2 years of searching, of regretting, of waking up at night with her voice in his head saying, "I knew you'd break." He never stopped looking. He never stopped failing to find her. Until one ordinary autumn afternoon, in a park in a city he was visiting, Wade Bemmels saw her again, and she wasn't alone. Chapter 5. The Girls. She was laughing, actually laughing, and the sound hit Wade like a bullet he never saw coming. The park was nothing special. Trees shedding leaves, paths winding between playground equipment, families scattered across the grass, enjoying the mild weather. Wade had cut through it on his way back to his hotel, needing air and space after another pointless meeting in another forgettable city. His life had become a series of these moments, airports and hotels and conference rooms all bleeding together, into a grey existence where nothing felt real anymore. Then he heard the laughter, rich and genuine and achingly familiar. His head turned before his brain processed why, and there she was. Donna Queen. Older, somehow both softer and stronger. Her hair was natural and wild, catching the afternoon light in ways that made his chest ache with memory. She wore jeans and a sweater, comfortable and unpretentious, exactly the woman he remembered. But everything else was different. Two little girls held her hands, toddlers with matching braids and bright jackets, their faces round with baby fat and innocent joy, their giggles infectious and pure. They were pulling at Donna, begging her to spin them, and she obliged with theatrical flair, lifting them one at a time while they shrieked with delight. Wade's heart stopped. The girls had her eyes, her smile, her nose. But something in the shape of their faces, the way they moved, the tilt of their heads when they laughed, his heart started beating again, too fast, too hard, threatening to burst through his ribs. They looked like him. Not obviously, not in a way a stranger would notice, but Wade saw it, the angle of their jaw, the curve of their brow, the way one of them scrunched her nose when she laughed, exactly like he did when something genuinely amused him. The way the other one tilted her head to the side when she was thinking, the same unconscious gesture he'd never realized he made until Donna had pointed it out during their marriage. The world tilted. Time stopped. Everything he thought he'd lost suddenly had a shape he'd never imagined, never dreamed, never even considered possible. In his daughters, the words echoed in his mind, foreign and familiar all at once. Daughters. He had daughters. Two beautiful little girls who existed in the world, breathing and laughing and living, completely unaware that their father was standing, frozen 30 feet away, watching his entire world reshape itself around their existence. "Mummy, push us on the swings," one of them demanded, tugging at Donna's hand with adorable insistence. Donna laughed, that sound that used to be his favorite thing in the world. "In a minute, Amare. Let Zuri catch her breath first." Amare. Zuri. His daughters had names, beautiful names, names Donna had chosen alone while pregnant with them, while building a life without him. Names he was hearing for the first time, standing in a park in a city he didn't know, watching a family that should have been his. Amare. It meant beloved in Spanish. Zuri. It meant beautiful in Swahili. She'd given them names that proclaimed their worth, that told them they were cherished, had probably spent months choosing them, imagining their futures, preparing to raise them alone because their father had destroyed everything. Wade couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what he was seeing. Amar, he could tell which was which now. The one with the slightly rounder face was spinning in circles, making herself dizzy on purpose and giggling when she stumbled. Zuri watched her sister with a mixture of amusement and concern, the protective one already, just like he'd been with the younger kids in foster homes. They had whole personalities, preferences, quirks, inside jokes with their mother, a history of bedtime stories and scraped knees and birthday parties and first words and all the million tiny moments that make up a childhood. And he'd missed all of it. Not because of circumstance or distance or fate, because of his fear, because when Donna had been carrying them, he'd looked at her and chosen suspicion over trust, because while she'd been going to doctor appointments, alone, feeling them kick, preparing to bring them into the world, he'd been signing divorce papers and trying to erase her from his life. Then Donna glanced up and their eyes met across the park. Her laughter died mid-breath. Her body went rigid, every muscle tensing like she'd seen a ghost. The color drained from her face so quickly, Wade took an unconscious step forward, worried she might faint. The toddlers kept tugging her hands, oblivious to the way their mother had suddenly stopped breathing, stopped moving, stopped existing in the present moment. Donna's eyes were wide with panic, with fear, with something that looked like trapped animal desperation. Her arms moved protectively around the girls, pulling them closer to her body in an instinctive maternal gesture that broke Wade's heart. She was afraid of him. Not angry, not hurt, afraid. Afraid he'd disrupt their lives, afraid he'd claim them, afraid he'd do to them what he'd done to her, love them for a moment and then destroy them when fear took over. Wade's feet moved without permission. He walked toward them, slowly, like approaching something precious and breakable that might shatter at any sudden movement. Each step felt like wading through concrete, his heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. Donna watched him come, and he saw panic flash across her face. She looked around quickly, assessing escape routes, calculating whether she could get the girls away before he reached them. Her jaw set in that determined way he remembered, the way that said she'd fight the entire world if she had to. "No," she said when he was still several feet away. Her voice was low, fierce, trembling with emotion he couldn't name. "Don't, Donna," his voice cracked on her name. "Please don't." The please killed him. She'd never begged him for anything during their marriage, even when he'd been destroying it. But now she was pleading, and it was to keep him away from his daughters. "Please, not here. Not now." The girls looked up at their mother, confused by her tone. Amari's smile faded. Zuri pressed closer to Donna's leg, picking up on the tension, even if she didn't understand it. "Mommy!" Zuri's voice was small, worried. "Who's that?" "Nobody, baby," Donna said, her eyes never leaving Wade's face. Each word was deliberate, careful, chosen to protect. "Just someone Mommy used to know. Nobody." The word hit him like a physical blow, like she'd reached across the distance and punched him in the chest. He was nobody to his daughters, a stranger, someone Mommy used to know, past tense, irrelevant to their present and their future. "I've been looking for you," Wade said, his voice barely above a whisper. He couldn't take his eyes off the girls. Amari had his mother's chin. Zuri had his grandmother's eyes. A grandmother they'd never meet, who died when Wade was a child. "For 2 years. I need to talk to you. I need to explain." "There's nothing to explain." Donna's voice was steady now, cold, the voice of someone who'd built walls higher than his ever were. "You made your choice. I made mine. We're done. Are they—" He couldn't finish the question, couldn't form the words. "Are they mine? Are those my daughters? Did I abandon my family without even knowing they existed?" Donna's expression hardened, turning to stone. "They're mine. That's all you need to know." But Wade saw the truth in her eyes, saw the way she held the girls protectively, like a lioness guarding cubs from a predator, saw the flash of fear that he'd figure it out, that he'd claim them, that he'd disrupt the life she'd built without him, the life she'd had to build because he'd failed her. He saw his entire past and future in those little faces, saw the foster kid he'd been in their features, saw the chance to be the father he'd never had, saw everything he'd destroyed before it even existed. "Donna, please. I was wrong. About everything. The evidence was planted," Kelton confessed. "I know you didn't." "I know you know," she cut him off, her voice sharp enough to cut. "Your lawyers sent the divorce papers with a full explanation of what actually happened. A very thorough, very expensive explanation that came 2 years too late. I signed them and moved on. This conversation is 2 years too late for anything that matters." One of the toddlers, Amare, was staring at Wade with open curiosity now, her head tilted in that gesture that was so heartbreakingly familiar. "Why is Mommy upset?" "She's not upset, baby," Donna said, forcing calm into her voice for her daughter's sake. Wade watched her transform, watched her push down every emotion to be strong for them. "We're just going to go play on the swings now. Say goodbye to the nice man." "But we just got here." "Now, Amare." The tone brooked no argument. Donna turned to leave, the toddlers in tow, and Wade felt panic rising in his throat. This couldn't be it. He couldn't let them walk away. Couldn't let his daughters disappear again when he'd just found them. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. And I'm saying no. Donna stopped, looked back at him with an expression that could have frozen fire. Her eyes were wet now, but she didn't cry. Wouldn't let herself cry in front of the girls. You don't get to appear in my life after 2 years and demand conversation. You don't get to meet my daughters. You don't get anything from me, Wade, not anymore. You lost that right when you chose your empire over our marriage. When you looked at your pregnant wife and decided she was lying. Pregnant wife. The words hung in the air between them, confirmation and condemnation all at once. Our marriage, Wade repeated, and the words felt like glass in his throat. Blood pounded in his ears. Donna, are they my... Don't. Her voice was a warning, sharp and absolute. Don't ask questions you have no right to answers for. These are my daughters, my family, and you're not part of it. You gave up that right the day you told me our marriage was over. She walked away without looking back. The toddlers followed, glancing over their shoulders at Wade with curious, innocent eyes that didn't know they were looking at their father. Amari waved, a small gesture of childlike friendliness to a stranger. Wade stood frozen in the middle of the park, watching his wife, his ex-wife, push their daughters on the swings. Watching Amari's braids fly as she pumped her legs. Watching Zuri laugh when Donna pushed her higher. Watching them laugh and play and exist in a world where he was nobody, just someone Mommy used to know. He stayed until they left, memorizing their faces, their voices, the way they moved. The way Amari's nose scrunched when she laughed. The way Zuri held Donna's hand with both of hers. The way they both looked back one more time before getting into Donna's car, their faces pressed against the window as they drove away. His daughters. The family he destroyed before he even knew it existed. That night, alone in his hotel room, Wade Bemmels sat on the edge of the bed and understood the true cost of his fear. He hadn't just lost Donna, the woman he'd loved. He'd lost Amari and Zuri, the daughters he'd never known. The family he'd obliterated with his paranoia. He'd orphaned his children before they were even born. And no amount of money, no amount of power, no amount of success could ever undo that. He cried until he couldn't breathe, until his chest ached, until the hotel room's pristine silence was filled with the sound of a broken man finally understanding what he'd destroyed. Everything. He'd destroyed everything. Chapter 6. The attempts. Wade Bemmels had negotiated billion-dollar deals with ruthless precision, but he couldn't negotiate his way back into the life of a woman who owed him nothing. The first attempt had failed before it even began. Please don't, echoed in Wade's head for days after that encounter in the park. But he couldn't leave it there. Couldn't accept that seeing her again, seeing them, would end with him standing there while his family walked away. He found a connection. Lior Sunder, someone who'd worked with both of them during the community initiative. Lior was cautious when Wade called, protective in a way that told him Donna had people who loved her enough to guard her from him. I need to talk to her, Wade said. Just once. I need her to hear what I should have said 2 years ago. Lior was quiet for a long moment. She doesn't want to hear from you, Wade, and frankly, after what you did, I don't blame her. I know, but I'm asking anyway, please. Why should I help you? Because she deserves to know the truth. About what happened. About how wrong I was. About, his voice broke. About everything. Another silence. Then write a letter. I'll make sure she gets it. But I can't promise she'll read it. Wade wrote the letter over several days, tore up countless drafts, tried to find words adequate for the magnitude of his failure, and came up short every time. Finally, he wrote from the raw, broken place inside him that had no pride left to protect. He told her about Kelton's betrayal, about the evidence that had seemed so damning, about the fear that had made him choose the worst interpretation instead of trusting his wife. He told her he was sorry, inadequate, insufficient, but true. He told her she'd been right about everything, especially about him being too scared and broken to recognize love when it was saving him. And he asked about the girls, begged to know if they were his. Promised he wouldn't interfere, wouldn't demand anything, just needed to know the truth. He sealed the envelope, sent it to Lior, and waited. The letter came back 2 weeks later, unopened, the envelope folded in half like a scar that wouldn't heal. Lior called. She asked me to return it, said she doesn't need your words, Wade. She needed them 2 years ago. Now she needs peace. Please tell her, no, I'm not your messenger. You want to talk to Donna, you figure out how to earn that right. But right now, you haven't. The line went dead. Second attempt. Wade found where she lived, not through investigators this time, but by following them from the park. Not stalking, he told himself, just needing to know they were real, that he hadn't imagined his daughters. Her neighborhood was warm, tree-lined, nothing like his sterile, high-rise existence. Kids played in yards, neighbors chatted on porches. It was the kind of place where people knew each other's names, where community meant something beyond networking opportunities. Donna lived in a modest house with a garden in front, toys scattered on the lawn, a life visibly lived and loved. Wade stood across the street for hours, watching lights turn on and off, hearing distant laughter, imagining his daughters inside being tucked into bed by the mother he'd failed. He finally walked to the door as dusk fell, raised his hand to knock. The door opened before his knuckles touched wood. Emmett stood there, taller than Wade remembered, with Donna's eyes and none of her gentleness. I wondered how long you'd stand out there. I need to talk to her. No, you don't. You need to make yourself feel better. That's different. Please. I just want to know. Wade struggled with the words. The girls. Are they mine? Emmett's expression didn't change. They're Donna's. That's all you need to know. But she was pregnant when you destroyed your marriage, Emmett said, his voice flat and cold. Did you know that? She had an ultrasound picture in her purse the day you told her you wanted a divorce. Was planning to tell you that weekend. Instead, you called her a liar and threw away your family. Wade felt his knees go weak. She was, oh God. Yeah, oh God. So while you were protecting your empire, she was carrying your daughters alone. While you were playing victim, she was building a life for children you didn't even know existed. And now you want to what? Apologize? Ask for forgiveness? Play father to girls you abandoned before they were even born? I didn't know. You didn't care enough to believe in her when it mattered. That's worse. Emmett stepped onto the porch. She doesn't need your apologies, Wade. She needed them 2 years ago when you broke her. Now she needs her daughters to grow up without the shadow of someone who taught her that love equals betrayal. I just want them to know, what? That their father didn't trust their mother? That he chose money over family? That he spent 2 years feeling sorry for himself while they've been thriving without him? Emmett shook his head. Go home, Wade. Build your empire. Live your life. But leave my sister and her daughters alone. They're happy. Don't ruin that because you can't live with yourself. The door closed. Wade stood on that porch in that warm neighborhood, staring at the house where his daughters slept, and felt the full weight of what he'd lost. Third attempt. Months passed. Then Wade saw a posting about a community education forum where Donna was speaking. He showed up, sat in the back, watched her command the room with grace and intelligence. After he approached, as she gathered her materials. Donna. She turned, saw him and smiled, polite, distant. The smile you give a stranger you're obligated to be courteous to. Wade. Hello. Her voice was pleasant, empty, like he was a former colleague she barely remembered. You were amazing up there. Your work with the foundation. Thank you, she said, still smiling that terrible empty smile. How have you been? How had he been? Destroyed, broken, mourning children he'd never known. Good. Busy. You? Very well. Wonderful, actually. She glanced over his shoulder, clearly looking for an exit. Excuse me, I should... Wait, please, just for a minute. Wade lowered his voice. I know about the girls. About how you were pregnant when we... Donna's smile didn't waver, but something cold flashed in her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Amare and Zuri, They're mine, aren't they? Oh, daughters. They're my daughters, she corrected, her voice still pleasant but with steel underneath. And this is neither the time nor the place for this conversation. Then when? Where? Tell me when you'll talk to me and I'll be there. Never would be good. She set down her materials. I have to go. It was nice seeing you, Wade. She walked away, and he watched her rejoin colleagues, engaging warmly with everyone else while treating him like a ghost. Wade left, unable to stand watching her thrive in a world where he didn't exist. Fourth attempt. Wade learned Donna ran a non-profit now, the Temperance Foundation, named after the woman who'd mentored her. He showed up at the office one afternoon, unannounced. The receptionist recognized him. Do you have an appointment? No, but I'll wait. He sat in the lobby for hours. Staff came and went, shooting him curious glances. Afternoon faded to dusk. Wade didn't move. When Donna finally arrived, briefcase in hand, tired from a long day, she stopped in the doorway, stared. It's fine, Marielle, she told her assistant. I'll handle this. She walked over slowly. Wade stood. You can't keep doing this, she said quietly. You can't keep appearing in my life. I know. I'm sorry, but I need you to understand. What do you need, Wade? She looked exhausted. What are you hoping to accomplish? I want to be part of their lives. Mari and Zuri, they're my daughters. They're children who don't know you exist, and they don't need to. I'm their father. You're a sperm donor. Donna cut him off, and the words were brutal in their honesty. Being a father requires showing up, believing in the mother, choosing family over fear. You did none of those things. I didn't know, because you didn't trust me enough to let me tell you. Her voice rose, then dropped, conscious of her staff. I was going to tell you that weekend. Had the ultrasound picture ready, had imagined your face when you found out. And instead you looked at me like I was your enemy and told me our marriage was over. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Let me make it right. Some damage can't be undone, Wade. Her eyes were wet now, but she didn't cry. You can't just show up 2 years later and demand to be a father. Those girls are happy. They're loved. They have family, community, everything they need. And they don't need someone who abandoned their mother while she was pregnant with them. I want to try, please. Let me try. Donna stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. No, because trying isn't enough. And I won't risk their hearts on your fear. Go home, Wade. She walked into her office. The door closed with finality that felt like the end of everything. Fifth attempt. Weeks later, Wade saw a notice that Donna's foundation was hosting a community resource fair. He volunteered to help set up, hoping for a chance to talk to her in a neutral space. She arrived as volunteers were arranging tables. Saw him immediately. Her expression shifted from surprise to resignation. Wade, what are you doing here? I signed up to volunteer. I wanted to help. You wanted to ambush me. I wanted to show you I'm serious about change, that I'm not just talking about it. Donna looked around at the other volunteers watching them, then pulled Wade aside. You can't do this. You can't keep inserting yourself into my life and my work. I'm not trying to insert myself. I'm trying to show you I don't care what you're trying to show me. She hissed, keeping her voice low. You want to volunteer? Fine. Find another organization, one that has nothing to do with me. But stop using community service as a way to get close to me and my daughters. That's not what That's exactly what you're doing. And it's manipulative and it needs to stop. Her voice broke slightly. Please, Wade, if you ever loved me, if you have any respect for what we had, leave me alone. Let me raise my daughters in peace. Let me do my work, without constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering when you'll appear next. Wade saw the exhaustion in her face. The plea wasn't angry, it was tired, beaten down by his persistence. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'll go. Thank you. He left the fair, got in his car, and finally understood what everyone had been trying to tell him. He wasn't helping. He was hurting. His attempts at reconciliation were just another form of control, another way of making his pain her problem, And if he truly loved her, if he truly wanted what was best for his daughters, he had to stop. Completely. Chapter 7. The Breaking. For the first time in his life, Wade Bemmels stopped trying to win and started trying to deserve. That night, Wade sat in his car outside his apartment building and finally broke, completely, irrevocably. The steering wheel was cold under his hands. The city lights blurred through tears he didn't try to hide. Somewhere in this city, his daughters were being tucked into bed by the mother he'd failed. Somewhere, Amari and Zuri were hearing bedtime stories, getting goodnight kisses, feeling safe and loved in a world he wasn't part of. And it was his fault, not Donna's for leaving, not Kelton's for betraying him, not the system's for failing to protect the evidence. His. He'd spent 2 years chasing forgiveness like it was another acquisition, another problem to solve with persistence and resources. But his daughters weren't a deal to close, and Donna didn't owe him access to them. He'd destroyed his family through his own. Fear and paranoia, and no amount of apologies, would rebuild what he'd burned. The realization should have been crushing. Instead, it felt like release, like a weight he'd been carrying without knowing it suddenly lifted, leaving him hollow but somehow lighter. For the first time, Wade stopped asking what he could get from Donna and started asking what he could give to the world his daughters would inherit. If he couldn't be their father, he could at least make sure the world treated foster kids better than it had treated him. If he couldn't teach Amari and Zuri what love meant, he could teach other children that they mattered. If he couldn't undo his mistakes, he could at least stop making new ones. The next morning, Wade put his penthouse on the market. His real estate agent was confused. "Sir, this property has increased in value significantly. Are you sure you want to sell?" "I'm sure. I don't want to live in a monument to my own emptiness anymore." His board thought he was having a complete breakdown when he called an emergency meeting. "You're selling the penthouse, stepping back from the company. What's going on?" "I'm becoming someone different," Wade said, and heard the certainty in his own voice. "Someone who might actually deserve the family I destroyed, even if I never get them back." "This is about that woman," someone muttered. "No," Wade replied. "This is about me, about the foster kid I was, about the father I might never get to be, about becoming someone who wouldn't have made the choices I made." He found a modest apartment in a neighborhood where people actually lived. It had 2 small bedrooms, one for him, one that sat empty but felt important somehow, like hope taking physical form. Old hardwood floors that creaked. Neighbors who said hello in the hallways and meant it. Windows that looked out onto a tree-lined street where kids played. It was nothing special, and that was exactly the point. The first night in the new apartment, Wade sat on the floor surrounded by unpacked boxes and felt more at home than he ever had in the penthouse. This place was real, lived in, human-sized. Then he started therapy, real therapy, not the executive coaching disguised as mental health support he'd done before. He found Dr. Iris Thorne through a referral from a non-profit director. She specialized in trauma, foster care survivors, people who'd built walls so high they'd forgotten what it felt like to be human. The first session, Dr. Thorne didn't ask about his company or his money. She asked about the scared kid he'd been. "Tell me about the first time you felt abandoned." Wade sat in the comfortable chair in her modest office and felt 30 years of armor start to crack. "My mother, when she died, I was in school. They pulled me out of class and I knew. Somehow I knew before they said anything. They took me to the hospital, but she was already gone. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is what happens when you need someone. They leave. You were a child who'd lost everything. That's not a lesson about trust. That's trauma." They unpacked the foster homes over the following sessions. The good ones, where he'd been treated like he mattered. The bad ones, where he'd learned that vulnerability meant pain. The caseworkers who'd cared, and the ones who'd forgotten he existed. The constant moves, the perpetual fear that he'd never belong anywhere. Why did I push her away? Wade asked during one session, the question that haunted his every waking moment. I loved her. I knew she was telling the truth, but I still chose to believe the worst. Dr. Thorne leaned forward. Because love required trust, and trust required vulnerability, and vulnerability felt like dying. You've spent your whole life protecting yourself from abandonment by abandoning first. Donna was the first person who made you want to stop running. That terrified you more than anything you'd ever faced, so I destroyed her, destroyed us. Destroyed our children before I even knew they existed. You destroyed the relationship. But Donna's still here, still thriving. You didn't break her, Wade. You broke her trust and lost her, but she survived. Your daughters are surviving. The question is whether you can survive this and become someone different. The sessions were brutal, necessary. Wade cried in that office more than he'd cried in his entire adult life. Cried for the mother who'd worked herself to death. Cried for the scared foster kid who'd learned all the wrong lessons. Cried for Donna, alone and pregnant, believing her husband when he said their marriage was over. Cried for Amari and Zuri, beautiful and innocent and growing up without a father, because their father had been too damaged to trust in love. I have daughters I'll never know, he said one afternoon, the words raw in his throat. How do I live with that? By becoming someone who would have believed their mother, by doing the work not to win them back, because you may never get that chance, but because those little girls deserve a father who's capable of love. Even if you never get to be that father to them, what if I never see them again? What if Donna never forgives me? What if they grow up thinking I didn't want them? Then you'll live with that, Dr. Thorne said gently. The same way Donna's lived with what you did to her. The same way countless people lived with consequences they didn't choose. But you can still do the work, still become better, still make the world a little less painful for kids who are where you were. Wade started volunteering, not at programs Donna ran. He stayed deliberately away from her world, not wanting to intrude or make his growth about winning her back. He found a community center across town, in a neighborhood that reminded him of where he'd grown up. He asked the director, a tired woman named Keisha, what they needed. Tutors, she said. Kids aging out of foster care who need help with college applications, job skills, basic life stuff the system doesn't teach. You good with kids? I don't know, Wade admitted. But I used to be one. Maybe that counts for something. It counted for more than he expected. The kids were wary at first. A rich man showing up to help? They'd seen that before. People who came once for the photo op, then disappeared. People who wanted to feel good about themselves without actually doing the work. But Wade kept showing up. Tuesday evenings, Saturday mornings, whenever they needed him. He taught resume writing and interview skills, helped with college essays, explained how to open a bank account, how to build credit, how to ask for help without feeling like a burden. A kid named Javon reminded him painfully of himself. Sharp, scared, trying so hard not to show it, carrying trauma like armor and pushing people away before they could leave. Why do you do this? Javon asked one evening, suspicious and curious in equal measure. Because someone should have been here for me when I was your age, Wade answered honestly. And since they weren't, maybe I can be here for you. That's corny. It is, Wade agreed. But it's also true. I was in 7 foster homes before I aged out. Nobody taught me how to survive in the real world. I had to figure it out alone, and I made a lot of mistakes. You don't have to make those same mistakes. Javon studied him. You really get it. Most people just feel sorry for us. I don't feel sorry for you. I'm angry on your behalf. There's a difference. Months passed, then a year. Wade changed, not performing change, but actually becoming someone different. He funded scholarships anonymously through an intermediary, making sure his name wasn't attached. Helped rebuild community centers, working alongside the construction crews instead of just writing checks. Worked with organizations supporting foster youth transition programs, sharing his story when it helped and staying silent when it didn't. He didn't do press releases. didn't seek recognition. The work was the point, not the credit, but words spread anyway. Articles appeared about the former CEO, who'd stepped back from his empire to focus on community work. The Bemmels Initiative became known for funding programs that actually helped, instead of just looking good on paper. Wade never mentioned Donna, never used his daughter's existence to explain his transformation, never exploited his pain for sympathy or credibility. This wasn't about them anymore. It was about becoming someone who deserved them, even if he never got that chance. He thought about Amari and Zuri constantly, wondered what they liked to eat, what made them laugh, whether they were afraid of the dark like he'd been. Wondered if Donna read to them at night, if they had her confidence or his caution, if they knew their father existed somewhere in the world. He hoped they were happy, hoped Donna had found peace, genuinely hoped it, even if that happiness and peace didn't include him. Dr. Thorne noticed the shift during one session. "You're not chasing forgiveness anymore." "No," Wade agreed. "I'm just trying to be better, for the kids who need it now, for the person I should have been when Donna needed me, for my daughters, even if they never know I'm doing it for them." "How does that feel?" "Lonely," he admitted, "but real. For the first time in my life, I'm living in truth instead of performance. I'm not trying to prove anything or win anything. I'm just trying to be someone who wouldn't have destroyed his family. That's growth, Wade, real growth. It doesn't change what I did." "No, nothing changes what you did. But you're not the same person who did it. That matters even if Donna never knows, even if your daughters never meet you." One day, several months into his new life, Wade got a call from Temperance Oaks, the elderly woman he'd met briefly 2 years ago, who Donna had spoken of with such reverence. "Mr. Bemmels, I've been reading about your work." "Miss Temperance." Wade sat up straighter, like being in her presence, even over the phone, demanded respect. "How can I help you?" "You rebuilt the Riverside Center, the place where I used to teach Donna." "Yes, ma'am. It deserved to live again." She was right about that. There was a long pause. Wade could hear her breathing, assessing, deciding. "You've changed," she said finally. "I'm trying to." "Good. Keep trying. Not for Donna, not for those babies, but because it's right. Because the world needs people who've learned from their mistakes instead of just repeating them. I will. I promise." Another pause. "There's a hospital fundraiser next month, honoring community leaders. Donna's receiving an award for her foundation's work." Wade's heart stopped. Started again. "That's wonderful. She deserves every recognition she gets. Your initiative is listed as a keynote donor." I didn't know. He'd approved the donation months ago, hadn't looked at which event it was for. Should I not attend? I don't want to make her uncomfortable. I'm telling you now so you can decide. Not to chase her, not to ask for anything, but to witness what she's built. You owe her that much, I think. What if seeing me hurts her? What if not showing up suggests you don't care about her accomplishments? Temperance's voice was gentle but firm. "She's being honored, Mr. Bemmels. Be there for that. Nothing else. No expectations, no demands. Just witness what she's done, despite what you did to her." Wade thought about it for a long moment. "You're right. I should go. For her, not for me." "Good. And Mr. Bemmels? Keep doing the work. Whether she sees it or not, whether anyone sees it or not, I will, Miss Temperance. Thank you." After he hung up, Wade sat in his modest apartment and understood what the invitation meant. Not closure, not forgiveness, not a second chance, just the opportunity to witness Donna's triumph from a distance, to celebrate her success silently, to honor what she'd become in the aftermath of his destruction. It was more than he deserved, and he would do it with grace, with respect, with the humility of a man who'd finally learned that love wasn't about what you could take. It was about what you could give, even when you'd never receive anything in return. Chapter 8. The Shift. Donna Queen had built her peace on the foundation of his absence, but slowly Quietly, that foundation began to crack. Donna saw the article on a quiet morning. Her daughters were at daycare. The foundation office was peaceful, coffee steaming beside her keyboard. Then Wade's name caught her eye. Her instinct was to close the browser. She didn't need updates on his life, didn't care what he was doing. But the headline mentioned Riverside Community Center, the place where Miss Temperance had taught her to read, where she and Wade had sat on broken steps and shared their scars before he'd proven he was exactly the man she'd feared. He'd rebuilt it, funded the entire renovation, created programs for foster youth, used the exact language she'd used about buildings deserving to live again. Donna's hand trembled as she set down her coffee. This wasn't performative charity. This looked like actual change. She shouldn't care. She'd built a beautiful life with her daughters, found peace in work that mattered. Wade's transformation, if it was even real, shouldn't affect her. But it did. Over the following weeks, more articles appeared. Mentorship programs, scholarships, community support. Wade's name attached to quiet, steady work that actually helped. The kind of work she did, the kind she'd begged him to care about before he'd destroyed their marriage. "Have you seen this?" Emmett asked one Sunday, phone in hand. The twins were napping while Donna cooked. "Seen what?" "Wade Bemmels. He's all over the community development news. Foster programs, youth centers. It's like he's actually changed." "I don't want to hear about him," Donna said, more sharply than intended. "Right, sorry." Emmett set his phone down. "Just thought you should know." But Donna did want to know. Couldn't stop reading the articles, watching his transformation from a distance, wondering if it was real or just another mask. The rage that had protected her was fading, not because Wade deserved forgiveness, but because holding on to it felt like carrying stones she no longer needed. Temperance noticed during one of their regular coffee meetings, "You've been distant lately. Something bothering you?" "Wade's been in the news. Doing the work I always wanted him to do." "I know. I've been watching too." Temperance settled back in her chair. "I spoke to him recently. Told him about your awards ceremony." Donna's head snapped up. "You what?" "I told him you were being honored, that his initiative was a donor, gave him the choice to attend or not." "Why would you do that?" "Because you've spent 2 years building walls around your pain, baby. And those walls are starting to feel less like protection and more like prison." Temperance reached across the table. "I'm not saying forgive him. I'm saying maybe it's time to decide if you're healed enough to be in the same room without it destroying you." "I don't know if I am." "Then the ceremony will tell you. Either way, he's done the work. Whether you witness it or not doesn't change that." The invitation to the hospital fundraiser arrived with Donna's name as an honoree. She stared at the list of donors, seeing Wade's initiative listed. She almost declined, but she'd worked too hard for this recognition. Her foundation had helped so many children. She refused to let his presence steal her celebration. The night before the event, lying awake while her daughters slept down the hall, Donna admitted the truth. She was terrified. Not of seeing Wade, but of what she might feel when she did. The rage had protected her, but it was gone now, leaving something more complicated: curiosity, exhaustion, the recognition that hating someone required as much energy as loving them, and she was tired of spending either on a man who'd chosen fear over their family. She thought about the twins. They asked about their father sometimes. "Where's our daddy?" Zuri had asked recently. "He's not in our lives, baby." "But you are so loved." "Why not?" "Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big ones, and we have to live with those choices. Does he know about us?" Donna had paused. "He knows now. But he didn't when you were born." "Oh." Zuri had processed this. "That's sad." "It is," Donna agreed. "But we have each other. And Uncle Emmett. And Aunt Temperance. And so many people who love you." "Okay," Zuri had said, satisfied. "For now. But someday they'd have harder questions. Someday Donna would have to explain why their father wasn't there, why she'd kept them from him, whether he'd wanted them, and she didn't have good answers yet. Lying in bed, Donna wondered, what did she owe her daughters? The truth? protection, the chance to know their father if he'd actually changed. She didn't know, but when the twins climbed into bed the next morning, asking if Mommy was okay because she looked worried, Daughte hugged them tight and made her decision. She would go to the fundraiser, accept her award, celebrate her work, and if Wade was there, if he approached her, she'd face that when it came. Not with rage, not with forgiveness, but with the truth that had always been her foundation. She deserved peace, and she would not sacrifice it for someone else's redemption, even if part of her wondered whether redemption was actually possible. Chapter 9. The Storm. The storm hit the city the night of the gala, wind rattling windows, rain turning streets to rivers, but inside the hotel ballroom, two people stood in their own quiet tempest. Daughte almost didn't go, stood in front of her mirror in the deep blue dress she'd bought for tonight, staring at her reflection and questioning every decision that had led her here. The dress fit perfectly, elegant without trying too hard, the color reminding her of the ocean at dusk. But she barely saw it. All she could see was the possibility of Wade being there, the man who'd destroyed her, the father of her children, the stranger she'd once loved more than breathing. "Mommy, you look like a princess," Zuri squealed from the doorway, breaking through Donna's spiraling thoughts. "A queen," Amare corrected, appearing beside her sister with the kind of certainty only a toddler could possess. "Like your name." Donna smiled despite her nerves, turning to embrace her daughters. They smelled like the lavender soap from their bath, their hair freshly braided, their pajamas covered in stars. Everything good in her life was in this moment. These two beautiful girls who'd saved her when she didn't know she needed saving. "You two are my princesses. Be good for Uncle Emmett tonight, okay?" "We will," they promised in perfect unison, already distracted by the promise of movies and popcorn with their favorite uncle. Emmett appeared behind them, his tall frame filling the doorway, studying his sister with the concern that had been constant since Wade destroyed her. "You sure about this?" "No, but I earned this award. I built something real, something that matters. I'm not letting ghosts steal my moment, and if he's there, then I'll handle it." She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin the way Dulcie had taught her when facing things that scared you. "I've survived worse than Wade Bemmels." Emmett walked over and pulled her into a hug. "You're the strongest person I know. You've got this. I hope you're right." "I'm always right. Ask my nieces." The twins giggled, and Donna felt some of the tension ease. This was her life now. This family, this love. Wade couldn't touch any of it unless she let him. The drive to the hotel felt both too long and too short. The storm was building on the horizon, dark clouds rolling in like judgment, the kind of weather that made the city feel electric and dangerous. Lightning flickered in the distance. By the time Donna pulled into the hotel parking lot, rain was starting to fall in fat, heavy drops that splattered against her windshield. She sat in the car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing deeply. She could still turn around, could claim she was sick, could protect herself from whatever might happen if Wade was in that ballroom. But she'd spent 2 years protecting herself, 2 years building walls and keeping herself safe. Maybe it was time to prove she could be in the same room with him and survive. The ballroom was elegant in that expensive, impersonal way, crystal chandeliers catching the light, white tablecloths crisp and perfect. The wealthy and philanthropic gathered to celebrate their own generosity while rain began to drum against the tall windows. Donna moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations from people who knew her work, posing for photos with other honorees, trying to enjoy the recognition she'd worked so hard for. People wanted to hear about the Temperance Foundation, about the kids they'd helped transition out of foster care, about her vision for expansion. She answered their questions, smiled for their cameras, played the part of the honored community leader. But part of her was always scanning the room, looking for him, dreading and anticipating his presence in equal measure. Then she felt him. It wasn't rational, wasn't something she could explain, But suddenly she knew Wade was in the room. The way you know when someone's watching you. The way you sense a storm before the first drop of rain falls. Donna turned. Slowly, and there he was. Wade Bemmels stood near the back of the ballroom. Not at the spotlight tables where donors usually preened, but in the shadows where he could observe without being observed. He looked different, thinner, like he'd forgotten to eat. Older, with lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and tears shed in private. He wore his expensive suit like it was just clothing instead of armor, like he'd forgotten it was supposed to impress people. Their eyes met across the ballroom, through the crowd of people who didn't know they were witnessing a moment that would change everything or nothing at all. And the world narrowed to just that connection. Every unspoken word hung between them. Every regret, every ghost, every possibility of what they'd been, and what they'd lost, and what they might never become. Donna's breath caught in her throat. She'd prepared herself for this moment, rehearsed what she'd say, how she'd react. She'd imagined feeling rage or pain, or the old wound reopening. But what she actually felt was more complicated than any of that. She felt tired. Tired of carrying the weight of their history. Tired of the rage that had protected her. Tired of hating someone who'd clearly learned to hate himself far more than she ever could. Wade didn't approach, didn't move, just stood there with an expression that looked like a man who'd learned to hold loss without letting it destroy him, who'd made peace with being nobody in her life, who'd come only to witness her success from a distance. Donna turned back to her conversation, heart hammering against her ribs, hands trembling slightly as she lifted her champagne glass to her lips. He was here. Wade was here. And she didn't know if that changed everything or nothing at all. The speeches happened in a blur. Donors were thanked with practiced sincerity. Causes were celebrated with carefully crafted talking points. Then Donna's name was called, and she walked to the stage on legs that felt stronger than they had any right to, feeling Wade's eyes on her the entire time. The spotlight was warm on her face. The crowd was attentive, respectful, and when she opened her mouth to speak, the words came from somewhere deeper than preparation. She spoke about Miss Temperance, the woman who taught her that one person showing up could change a child's entire trajectory. She spoke about her grandmother Dulcie, who'd raised 2 children that weren't hers because love was a choice, not an obligation. She spoke about believing in children that society had written off, about the kids they'd helped find homes and finish school and discover their worth. Every child deserves to know they matter, she said, her voice steady and strong. Not because of where they came from or who their parents are, not because they're perfect or easy or convenient, but simply because they exist, because they're human, because showing up for them might be the difference between a life lived and a life survived. She told stories of the kids they'd helped, the girl who'd aged out of foster care and was now in medical school, the boy who'd been written off as a troublemaker and was now mentoring younger kids, the siblings who'd been separated and were now reunited, building the family they'd always deserved. The applause was thunderous when she finished. People stood, their faces moved by her words, by the work she'd done, by the proof that one person could make a difference. And when Donna's eyes found Wade in the crowd, he was standing too, clapping with tears, streaming down his face that he didn't try to hide, completely unashamed of crying in a room full of strangers who didn't know what his tears meant. Something shifted in her chest, something she didn't have a name for yet. Not forgiveness, not love, but acknowledgement, recognition, the exhausted realization that they'd both been broken by what happened. And they'd both found ways to survive. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to thin and people moved toward the bar or formed conversation clusters, Donna needed air. The ballroom felt too small, too warm, too full of people who wanted things from her, photos, stories, promises of future collaboration. She slipped out to a balcony, letting the cool evening breeze calm her racing heart. The storm was closer now, thunder rumbling in the distance like a warning. Rain fell in sheets beyond the overhang, turning the city into something blurred and dreamlike. She heard the door open behind her, felt his presence like a physical thing, like gravity pulling at her center, knew without turning that it was Wade. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "I shouldn't intrude. I'll go." "Wait," the word surprised her. Surprised them both. He stopped, hand still on the door handle, looking at her with those eyes that used to know every part of her. Donna turned to face him, stood there in the rain-touched air, looking at the man who destroyed her and rebuilt himself in the aftermath. "Wait," she said again, softer this time. He stepped back onto the balcony, let the door close, stood several feet away, respecting her space in a way he never had during his desperate attempts at reconciliation. They stood in silence for a moment, the rain providing soundtrack to their unspoken thoughts. Donna studied him, really studied him, saw the changes in his face, lines that hadn't been there before, a softness around his eyes that spoke of tears shed and lessons learned, a kind of peace that looked hard-won and fragile. He looked like a man who'd been broken and put himself back together differently, not perfectly, but honestly. "You look different," she said finally. "I am different." He didn't say "for you," didn't make it about winning her back, just stated it as fact. The Riverside Center, the foster programs, all of it, that's really you. Yes, not for redemption or to prove anything, just because you were right about everything, about what matters, about who I should have been. Thunder rolled closer, shaking the building's foundations. Lightning flickered across the sky. "Why did you come tonight?" Donna asked, though part of her already knew. "Because you deserve to be celebrated. Because your work matters more than anything I've ever built. Because I wanted to witness what you've accomplished, even from a distance, even knowing I'm not part of it." Despite everything, despite the walls she'd built and the protection she'd crafted, Donna felt something soften inside her. "I built a good life. The girls are happy. We're happy. I know. I'm glad, genuinely glad, even though it doesn't include me." Her throat tightened. "They ask about you sometimes. Their father." Wade's expression broke like glass, pain flashing across his face so raw she almost looked away. "What do you tell them?" "That you didn't know about them when they were born. That you made a mistake. That sometimes people aren't ready for love even when it's right in front of them. That's more grace than I deserve." The rain pounded harder against the overhang, creating a curtain that separated them from the rest of the world. "You really have changed," Donna said. "And it wasn't a question. I'm trying to, every single day. Not because I think it'll bring you back or earn me the right to know my daughters, but because the man I was shouldn't have existed. Because those kids I mentor deserve someone who actually shows up. Because," his voice broke, "because becoming better is the only way I can live with what I did." Donna was quiet for a long moment, watching rain turn the city into watercolor. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything. Do you wish you'd never met me? That you could go back and avoid all this pain?" Wade didn't hesitate. "No, never. Even knowing how it ends, I'd choose to meet you. I'd choose to fall in love with you, because you showed me what it meant to be real, to be human, to matter for reasons that had nothing to do with money or success. You gave me the best months of my life and I destroyed them, but I don't wish they never happened. I just wish I'd been strong enough to deserve them." Donna felt tears prick her eyes. She'd spent 2 years hating him, building walls against him, protecting herself from the memory of loving him. But standing here, watching him cry without shame, hearing truth in his words that she'd learned to recognize, she felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet, maybe never, but the exhausted recognition that holding on to hate hurt her more than it hurt him. "I don't expect anything," Wade continued, his voice steady despite the tears. "Not forgiveness, not a chance to know the girls, not even this conversation. I just wanted you to know, seeing you happy matters to me. Knowing you're thriving, that you've built something beautiful from the wreckage I caused, it helps. Not with the guilt. Nothing helps with that. But it helps me believe that maybe I didn't destroy everything, that you survived me and became even stronger." Donna turned to face him fully, really looked at him for the first time since the park. I need you to understand something. What you did changed me. Made me question whether I could trust my own judgment. Made me wonder if being genuine was just being foolish. You broke something in me that took a very long time to repair. I know. I'm so sorry, but she paused, gathering courage for words she hadn't known she'd say. It also made me stronger. I rebuilt myself without you, found my worth without needing validation, created a life so full that your absence became just a fact, not a wound. And maybe, her voice caught, maybe someday we can talk. Really talk. Not now, not soon, but someday. About what's real now, not what was. Wade's tears fell freely, and he made no move to hide them. Whenever you're ready, if ever, I'll be here. Not waiting, just living, doing the work, being better. And if you decide the girls should know me someday, when they're ready, and if you think I've proven myself worthy of that chance, I'll decide that, Donna said firmly. When and if it happens. Can you accept that? Yes, completely. They're your daughters. You've protected them and raised them and given them everything they need. I trust your judgment, even though I gave you every reason not to trust mine. The silence that followed wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement, the raw recognition that they'd both been broken by what happened. The damage couldn't be undone, but people could choose to stop letting it define them. You were right about everything, Wade said, his voice barely above a whisper. About me being too scared, too broken, too committed to my walls. I destroyed our family because I couldn't trust in love. I looked at my pregnant wife and chose suspicion over faith. I orphaned my daughters before they were even born. There aren't words for how sorry I am. And I was wrong too, Donna admitted, the confession costing her. I didn't think you could change. Didn't think anyone who'd hurt me that deeply could become someone different. But you did. Even if I'm not ready to let that matter yet, I can see it. The work you're doing. The person you're becoming. The storm was easing now, rain softening from deluge to steady rhythm, the worst of it passing like all storms eventually do. I should go, Wade said, though he didn't move. Let you get back to your celebration. Yeah. Donna walked toward the door, then stopped. Looked back. Wade? Yes? Me. Keep doing the work. For those kids who need someone to show them they matter. For yourself. For the father you might get to be someday if the girls decide they're ready and if I decide you've proven this change is permanent. I will, I promise. Not to win you back, just because it's right. And take care of yourself. Actually, take care. You look like you've been carrying too much for too long. Something in his expression softened, surprised by her concern. You too, Donna. You deserve all the recognition they gave you tonight and more. She walked back into the ballroom, leaving Wade alone on the balcony as the storm raged and the city disappeared behind sheets of rain. Inside, she accepted more congratulations, smiled for more photos, celebrated everything she'd built, but part of her stayed on that balcony, in that moment of raw recognition, wondering if someday might actually come, and whether she'd be ready if it did. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. It wasn't a love story, it was the first breath of something real between two people who'd burned and survived. The storm passed, leaving the city washed clean. Inside, the gala wound down, guests heading toward exits. Donna stood near the coat check, award in hand. She'd done it. Faced Wade without falling apart. Ms. Queen, your car is delayed because of flooding. I'll wait. The lobby was quieter. Donna found a chair by the window, watching rain-slicked streets. They say it'll clear soon, Wade's voice. She looked up. He stood at a respectful distance. Seems like the kind of storm that does what it wants, Donna replied. Can I sit? She nodded. He sat 2 chairs away. They sat in silence until Wade spoke. You were right about everything. And you were wrong about me. I didn't think you could actually change. I had to. Staying who I was would have killed me. Thunder rumbled, distant now. The twins ask about you sometimes, Donna said. I tell them the truth, that you didn't know about them, that you made mistakes. That I did too. You didn't, I did. I could have fought harder, could have made you listen. But I was scared too. Silence stretched between them. I need you to understand, Donna said. What you did changed me, made me question everything, but it also made me stronger. I know. So if we talk again, if the girls ever meet you, it won't be about fixing what broke. It would be about what's real now. Wade nodded. I don't deserve that. But if you decide they're ready, I'll be here. The silence wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. The raw recognition that damage can't be undone, but people can choose to stop letting it define them. Maybe someday, Donna said quietly, when enough time has passed. When I can trust this version of you is real and permanent. That's more than I hoped for. It's not a promise, just possibility. Then possibility is everything. Outside, the rain eased. Donna's phone buzzed. Her car arriving, she stood. Wade stood too. Congratulations again, he said, on everything you've built. You're an incredible mother, an incredible person. Thank you. She walked toward the door, stopped. Wade, yes? Take care of yourself. Actually, take care. You too, Donna. She walked into the rain, letting it wash over her as she climbed into the car. Through the window, she saw Wade still standing there, holding loss without letting it destroy him. As the car pulled away, Donna felt the rage completely gone. In its place was exhausted recognition that holding hate hurt her more than him. Maybe someday they'd talk, build something new, or maybe they wouldn't. Either way, Donna Queen was whole. Her daughters were loved. Her work mattered. And Wade Bemmels was no longer the villain, just a person who'd hurt her, learned from it, and was trying to be better. It wasn't a love story, not redemption, not a happy ending wrapped in a bow. Just real. Tough, raw, uncertain, but real. And as Donna watched the storm-washed city pass, she realized real was exactly what she needed. Not perfect, not resolved, just honest. And in a world that tried to break her, honest was the greatest victory of all. End.